just have a complete collapse mentally. She just couldn't function, often couldn't talk, just much more than just a kid not wanting to go to school. She was like having a shutdown. It was like, yeah, it was more than a neurodiversity. It was kind of like she was really struggling mentally.
We've got your 19-year-old,
Yeah.
and then you've got twins.
Yeah, 14-year-old twins, boy and a girl, yeah.
14-year-old twins, boy and a girl.
That whole, the school is the same system for every child, whatever their setup is, whatever their neurodiversity or their interests. So I've always found school challenging as a concept in that way. I think it's not, some kids thrived at it. I mean, I've got friends who've done really well through school, but it's not for everyone. So when Nat and Dwayne were like, let's take the twins out. Let's just educate them at home, give them that freedom of choice of what they want to do. And that went well for quite a while.
What age were the twins when you took them out of school?
About 6, 7, yeah.
So they'd only been in school for a year or two?
They started at 4, it was nursery first, and then, did a couple of years. Yeah, so they didn't really get the whole school experience at all at that age, whereas, because we switched neighbourhoods, we came down here, and the school near here was a lot bigger, a lot rougher, and they just really didn't click there. And like I say, we just kind of made a decision. We didn't really want it to be a mainstream school, so it's more about us at that point. And then eventually, when they got to pre-comprehensive, they were like, we want to go back. We want to go back to school. I think it was Lila actually that wanted to go back, and George tagged on.
And so they were what, about 11 then?
Yeah, this was first year of comprehensive, and then funnily enough, Lila didn't really. She survived for 7 or 8 months, I think, and then I think we suddenly started seeing all this neurodiversity that we didn't really hadn't really seen because she wasn't in that environment. And I think also that age maybe was when it started to show more. So she felt she couldn't be in a classroom, it was too noisy, she felt like people behind her were watching her, she thought everyone hated her or thought she was fat. There was all kind of typical things, but there was another edge to it.
Normal life was happening easily for her when she wasn't in school?
Yeah.
And then when
There's only little signs, like she tiptoed when she was little, which is quite an a sensory thing. There were little things, but nothing. Yeah, she was just a normal girl, kid. It was really the sort of the canvas of school that saw these representations much more clearly, and actually
interesting.
Really brought out those things. So, funny enough, she didn't last. George came out, didn't he? So George has ended up going, and Lila's ended up not being able to go. Which is quite funny.
So George is in school?
So George is still surviving.
I like the way you say surviving.
Yeah, I mean, it's just boring. He said it's really boring. But he's always getting R1s, which is like he's contributing class. So, he's doing really well. But he just comes out of school and it's just like, it was dead, which is the modern slang for it was just boring and rubbish, basically. So he's not getting any stimulus from it. And it's a very rigid system that all they're caring about is why isn't she in school today? And it's just ticking boxes for the government to go, okay, this person's off school for a reason. But the only thing they put in place for her was a exit card, which meant she could come out of the school, that hectic environment, for 10, 15 minutes in a safe space, but then you just put it back in there. So it's like, well, how's that going to achieve anything? I mean, partly resources, but partly the school just hasn't really tried to understand what's going on. It's just all been about, why isn't she here? Why isn't she here? Over and over again. It's like, well, what are you doing to help her? So
what, is she not going into school in the morning? Does she wake up and go, I don't want to go to school? And so you don't send her to school because you're used to the home ed sort of environment anyway?
Yeah, it was not so much she would wake up and go, I don't want to go to school. She would just have a complete collapse mentally. She just couldn't function, often couldn't talk, just much more than just a kid not wanting to go to school. She was like having a shutdown. It was like, yeah, it was more than a neurodiversity. It was kind of like she was really struggling mentally to be, the whole idea was just damaging her. You could see it was physically and mentally making her worse and worse and worse. So in the end, that started affecting her sleep. So now she's very much on her sleep side. We're very, very difficult to get her out of it. We've tried everything, no screens, all the stuff they tell you doesn't work when a kid's thinking 100 miles an hour about death, the universe. There are so many things, but not in like a classic way, just much more pronounced and like disruptive thought patterns. So, but yeah, it's just been a long battle with the council and the school, trying to get them to just recognise that this isn't just a kid who's saying she doesn't want to go to school or is lazy or just doesn't want to be at school. This is a kid who's, the school environment is not it's not a good fit for her, and there's nothing being put in place to adjust it for her. Like my sister said, if someone was in a wheelchair, you'd put a ramp in. You need those mental ramps, you need those systems in place to help her grab onto the education. And they could have got her. I think they could have kept her there if they'd done that, but they left it so long and it became so damaging. The whole place is now a toxic structure that represents everything that was wrong about it all. So potentially we were trying to get her into another school, Running Deer. So, you know, I think she would go into an educational environment again, but it can't be a massive one where there's 10, 20 kids in the classroom, because the overall sensory autism, the sort of feeling of being watched and all those things, it needs to be small.
Have you taken her out of school again now officially?
No, she's still on roll.
She's still on roll?
Because if you take them off roll, then the council will just go,
you're home ed
you're off.
now.
Yeah, brilliant. So you keep them on roll to try and get the educational healthcare plan.
Okay, so she doesn't have any HCP?
She does now. So it took us a year and a half, 2 years to get her an HCP in first place.
Did you do that yourself?
Yeah, battled that with my sister, her aunt, over and again. They refused. We went to tribunal. They lose 94% of their tribunals in Devon. So they'll go to tribunal because they know that gives them time. Actual from the evidence that they are using those systems to stall. They're not doing it because they're incompetent or they think there's a chance. They're doing it on purpose to push time all the time. And now Lila's nearly out of school. She's going to be 15 in June. And it feels like they're stalling again. They've just said to Running Deer now, they're inadequate. So that's the one school they were looking at for her. So in September, when that place was up, now they've said they're inadequate. They'll probably turn around and go, oh, well, it's inadequate. Sorry, we're not going to recommend them now. So then what happens to her? Nothing. The whole system's just a stalling game.
So how are you managing with your daughter at home, even though she's still on roll? Are they on your back, the school?
Not educationally, interestingly. They want her to attend, but they don't. This is the thing. It's not just that. The school haven't issued her any work since she's been at home. They literally, all they want to know is why she's not in school, so they can show the Ofsted or whatever she's not in school because of this.
Do you have to phone them up every day and say she's not coming in today because?
Every day we get a text or an email saying Lila's not in school today, even though they know the situation, even though they've got someone coming once a week to spend time with her because they know the situation. They've still got to tick those boxes. Absolutely insane. This is the situation. This is what we're waiting for. CAMS, we're waiting for sensory, we're waiting for ADHD and autism assessments. The waiting lists are 2 to 3 years. And I just listed all the problems with the system itself, and he just went, yeah, hands off. You shouldn't be here, basically, justifying this full-time job as someone who's an expert in HCP in the sort of neurodiversity, and then you've got to do that on top of everything else. It's like how they're letting that weight go on to the parents because that takes it off of them, and it saves more money. And like the amount of people I know, including us, where the HCPs actually recommended the same school or another school that's completely inappropriate, and then you contact that school and they're just like, what? We just read their ECHP. We can't possibly cater for their specific needs. And same happened with Lila. They're just like, what? And why have they done that? You know. But again, it's a stalling process. What
appealed to you about Running Deer School?
It's literally got 12 kids, which is hyper small, really. But it's in the woodlands. They do the subjects, but you don't have to do GCSEs in all of them. It's just basically trying to reintegrate a kid back into an educational environment. But if they go, oh, I'm freaking out, it's too much, or there's just a woodland there, and they can just go and wander in the woods. They can do woodcraft. So there's much more practical skills being brought in, plus the educational side. But it's also hands-on, like literally 1 or 2 people per child, nurturing them and getting them back to a state where they could go into a bigger educational system, probably, because they've kind of repaired them a bit and given them the time to heal and get back into something that would be more suitable. Like I say, they could have kept Lila if they'd put those things in place earlier and not just gone, there's a 15-minute exit card back in the class, and been flexible and worked with her and nurtured her if they'd had the funding and the backing of the council.
What does she like doing? What do you think her subjects are, and what do you think?
She wants to go to art school.
So
she's a great artist. Yeah.
Is she?
Yeah, she's really good.
What do you think would have happened had she never been to school?
She'd stayed homeschooled.
Yeah.
I think she would have been a completely different girl though, because when, like in the summer holidays, the kids are always so much nicer, they're so much more relaxed, they're politer, Do you know what I mean? And as soon as they go back into the grind, they start getting grumpier and irritable, and all these things start tweaking off.
What's his schooling like? Is he okay in school, apart from he comes home and says it's boring?
Yeah, George is he's the most sort of average kid. You know, he's just going to school, he's doing it, it's boring, but he's getting on. He's got his group of friends there, which has made a big difference.
And he's at the old Steiner, or is it still the Steiner School?
It's now called Thomas Hall School.
Is that considered a SEND school then now?
I mean, it's not officially, but it's 50%. 50% SEND kids.
And that's because it used to be the Steiner School and people were looking for an alternative type of education. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. I think that school, because it was low uniform, it was play-based, a lot less pressured. So, yeah, everyone with a neurodiverse kid just went, that's the answer. That's a school I'd send my kids to. And we were trying to get ours in there for years because we didn't want them to go to the mainstream ones for those reasons. But yeah, that school was like, they would be all right there. It's almost like homeschooling in a school. It's kind of much more geared towards individuality, play-based learning, but still had the GCSEs in the structure. Perfect. But of course that failed, or they made it fail. And then...
So what do you mean they made it fail?
Well, Ofsted will come in, and if you're not being strict and bringing in the R ones, which is the credits, and the C ones, which is the punishments, and isolation, where a pupil's put in isolation for up to 24 hours. So how that's dealing with what's going on with that kid and why they're playing up, by sticking them on their own in a room for days. I'm talking days of coming into school, being separated, doing their lessons in a lunch in this separate thing. It's like, what are you teaching that kid that it doesn't fit in? I mean, obviously he's a nightmare, there's probably an issue, but then by putting him in isolation, it's like, I just don't, why are we treating our kids like that? It's bonkers. You know, get to the root cause of it, find out why. Maybe he's not right for that school, but...
So this school, the Steiner School, didn't have that before?
No, the Steiner School was really laid back, certainly much more based around letting the kids develop their own clothes. And there were issues with it, but yeah, if Ofsted came in and just went, what's going on? Where's this? Where's that? None of your systems are in place to tick those boxes that get you a good Ofsted. A good Ofsted report's like a good, when you're in catering, to get a kitchen to pass its 5 hygiene. It's not about necessarily having the cleanest kitchen. It's about protocol, showing temperature sheets, showing you've got the chemicals in the right place, showing you thought about the system structure. And that's like that with the school. As long as they tick those boxes and show that they've thought about those things, it could be as draconian, or it could be, but it can't be what Steiner or Running Deer are, which is kind of going, right, let's do this a different way. Let's let the kids grow in their own space. Let's give them proper room to breathe and grow and learn through a different method. You know, maybe that's not for everyone, but I think those schools shouldn't be downgraded by Ofsted because they're being that way. And that's what's happening.
And that's what happened to that school?
Yeah, and that's what's happening to Running Deer. They've given it an inadequate, well, it's a very adequate school. It's perfect for the kids that go there, but it's not going to get them through to GCSEs by 16 necessarily. It's not going to tick all the official boxes of what they see a school should be. So
you think Lila won't be able to go there now? Did you want it for September, or do you want it now?
Well, no, they said we could have got her a place now. She could be there now if they hadn't fobbed us off in the tribunal and made us go through all those hoops, which they always lose. 94% they've lost. So they knew they were going to lose that tribunal.
So you went to tribunal?
Yeah, and we won.
So hang on, what does that mean? They took you, or you took them? What does going to tribunal involve?
Sure. Yeah, so they basically either don't give an EHCP, which they didn't at first, or
right,
they give one that's inadequate.
So you applied for an EHCP, they turned you down, you took them to tribunal.
Yeah, then we won, which is, like I say, 94% of people win those. They're just doing it to stall. And then, so then we won that. Then now we're going to a second tribunal because the current EHCP is recommending her going back to that same school, which we've already established, and the school have admitted they can't meet needs. They can't meet her needs. They've said that on paper. And again, they know that, and they know when it goes to tribunal, they'll lose again, because by the law, they will. But it buys them time. And all this time, they're not looking at Lila, who's a 14-year-old, who's not in education this whole time or getting any help. They're just looking at the figures and the numbers and going, let's get these numbers down. There's no humanity. You know, they were saying, look at the actual, these are these kids who are missing out at this education because you're crunching numbers and stalling them just purely to keep your system ticking over. So yeah, absolute scandal.
Yeah.
Like someone said, the Horizon Post Office scandal is 1,000 people, and it's horrific what happened to them. But you're talking hundreds of thousands of people who are getting just as equally shafted by this system. it's a huge scandal. From home, it's the fact that you spend so many hours a week trying to get the health care, trying to get the HCP paperwork, and that's another job in itself. I mean, my sister could start a career as an advisor for EHCP now. She's an absolute, but that's because she spent years. But it's taken such a battle, you know. If they took the battle out of that, imagine how much easier it would be, how much quicker those kids would be getting the help they need. Education shouldn't be a box ticking exercise, it should be. Yeah. Well, look at Dead Poets Society. I mean, he gets them in, he takes them out, and he makes their minds go, whoa, life's, and it's just brilliant. That's what teaching has to be. And obviously you're not going to get 1,000 of him, and it's a very specific thing, but yeah, that training should be teaching them how to make learning a magical experience and a wonderful thing. Yeah.